So, to sum up this week's mayhem of me recommending manga, I'll be talking about 2 new mangas. Technically, the second one is not. The first one is not new, but brand new in some people who don't know certain mangas because they exist. But you want to hear good recommendations. So, to sum up the first new manga, it would be a legendary assassin falls in love, then retires, opens a convenience store, and he has to protect his family from his old life. Oh, did I also mention that he's an out of shape assassin? So yeah, that should make things interesting because half of the time he's out of shape and the other half is not. So basically the genres that are in this show is action comedy. It does qualify sort of as a slice of life, also not. The slice of life aspects come in between, where it focuses more on comedies most of the time, and it also sports the fastest waist drop in history, if you know what I mean, and I'm pretty sure you don't. So we have at least 3 core members, and it's quite similar to Gintama, if what I mentioned before did not sort of entice you, which would be weird if it didn't, because I haven't really mentioned important things. So basically you have 3 core members, or the main characters I guess, and then you have occasionally occurring characters, which are the assassins, the wife, and the daughter. So the 3 core members include Gintoki, Shinpachi, I mean Sakamoto, Shin, and Lu, which are the 3 main characters I guess. And then basically, if I were to sum up Sakamoto into a couple of words, is a quiet assassin who's technically One Punch Man in his own universe, and also he will do anything for his family to save them. And then you have Shin, who is a mind-reading assassin, and he just decides to stay with Sakamoto for no particular reason aside from him admiring him and him interested in what Sakamoto will get up to next. And then we have the Chinese girl, which is Lu, not Kagura. So we have Lu, who comes from a mafia family, got saved by Mr. Sakamoto and Shin after they wiped out an entire family just to save her. And need I say more? Probably, but I'm not. Let's keep going on. So basically the story is still ongoing. It's above 40 chapters, which means you don't have to have the added stress of something you like getting cancelled midways. And honestly, the whole manga relies on characters and 2-bit world building, and it has slapstick comedy, which technically doesn't count as comedy, but if you're into that type of comedy, this will be good for you. And it adds more of a slice of life until assassins start to show up, similar to One Punch Man, where the character is kind of OP and makes it surprising every single time. So in terms of his strength points, that's a plus for him because he can get out of almost any situation if he just puts his mind to it. And adding on to that, I would say the comedy doesn't come off as heavy. It also doesn't come off as too light, but sometimes it struggles to strike a balance, but it's good enough for me that it makes me chuckle. It's not something you're going to be rolling on the floor laughing. Quite similar to Gintama when it gets to the goofy aspects, but it doesn't hit the same tone as Gintama, where Gintama is actually genuinely funny. But that's just me. Also, the action sequences when I was reading the manga are actually somewhat very easy to follow, because when I'm reading manga, I think I read this manga where I was following it. I did not understand what was going on in the page. It was hard to read. The art style was good, but the problem was it was hard to read. So I think it might be me. I might be the problem, but let's carry on. Anyway, if you actually want to continue actually going to look for this manga, sometimes it actually does throw me into a loop, because in terms of its comedy, sometimes it might turn monotonous and you might not like it, but that's just me nitpicking rather than actually giving it proper criticism. So yeah, and honestly the art style is quite nice. Some characters are funny and others are just plain weird, and I think that's what the manga is actually aiming for. That's kind of its strong suit. The fight scenes are actually fluid and they do well, but honestly the fight scenes could be more detailed, but honestly I blame One Punch Man for spoiling me so much, because that's what I've been reading recently a lot, up until the current chapter. That's what I've been reading, and it has spoiled me plentiful by showing me amazing artwork. Like genuinely so. It showed me some of the most amazing artwork you can get in mangas. Someone in the comment will say, oh no, you can get better artwork in this, but yeah, I get that, but One Punch Man showed me something good. So from the comedy to the quasi slice of life to simply good art style and fighting scenes, what more could you ask for aside from more funny scenes? Now, is this a story for you? Probably. If you like a show like Gintama, then you'd probably like it. It has great mood swings between the fighting and the comedy, and if you're expecting far more intricate jokes, or you know, jokes that you'd expect from other certain shows, then I'd highly suggest you not read this one because you might get disappointed, but it's still a good manga to read when you're, on a slow day reading manga on a Saturday while wearing your sweatpants with holes in them. It's still a good read, trust me. Oh, on a similar note about Assassins, maybe this new manga might excite you because it's going in the same direction you'd expect the new mangas to go, which is basically the dark fantasy route, sort of like Jujutsu Kaisen, like the new shonen type of vibe, not the old school one, the new styles. So I'm gonna be honest with this one. Rather than it being about assassins, it's about Yakuza's. Same difference though, sort of. Anyway, the story follows a young boy named Maruo. He might be actually looking for his own place, or maybe he's just looking for a good fight. Anyway, he meets this lass named Urara, who's just getting chased by a bunch of thugs. He beats them up, and a couple of pages later on, they make a pledge on, or rather they share a Sakazuki cup, but before they did that, they actually just made a blood pact at the end. So yeah, that's just me defining it as fast as possible. It's a shonen show. Rather than it showing, it's not really in a bad way. It explores fantasy and the supernatural. Also, if there's a tag for Yakuza, it probably has it. Now, onto the characters. The characters we're honestly just looking at is just two main characters. And the main character himself, which is Maruo, is technically what you'd expect. The dumb shonen protagonist who's just looking for a good fight and absurdly strong in some regards. And honestly, I hope they can actually grow this, and considering the new type of shows on the block, I feel like they might expand this on more instead of just making him a dumb person or a dumb character that just knows how to fight. I really pray that they make this grow into something worthwhile so that people might be able to read it more. Also, now we have Urara, a supernatural being who's actually connected to the lost families who was in power in the underworld. While I will say one word for her would eerily be cunning. And I hope they expand on her character because she seems like a genuinely more interesting character than the main character himself. She genuinely seems cunning. She's ready to cut anybody's throats in the underworld, and she's out for blood because she feels like people killed her dad. And I'm here for that. I'm here for that fucking Black Air Force energy. So the biggest point of this is that it only has technically 3 chapters released, so there really isn't much I can draw from. But to be honest, the goalpost has already been set for the 2 main characters, which is just basically reaching the top of the Yakuza world and claiming their rightful place. And the main character already has his own satisfaction from fighting a bunch of strong people, since, well, normal humans are squishy, and when you punch them they can actually feel pain, unlike him. Now, what I will say is that the antagonists are shown in the beginning, and it makes it interesting. The first chapter is not really strong. It's not really the most strongest first chapter I've read, because I've read Monster number 8, also known as Kaiju number 8, and the first chapter hooked me in, like genuinely hooked me in. So I did not get that from here, but to be honest, the second chapter does a good job. It actually keeps me hooked in and continues reading. I would say that the world building, if I had to pick something out, the world building is kind of, how should I say this? It's basic. It built upon what we already have in our world, like, oh, you have, a city, just throw in ghouls, Tokyo Ghoul, or you have this, just throw in that. It built upon that type of system where it's not really heavy world building, it's just a simple world building. We don't have a power system yet, and we still don't know what type of power system they might use for the supernatural beings, and also how the main character got strong, because I don't believe the One Punch Man route worked for this man, because this man basically pulled the One Punch Man route. All he just said was, I want to be a shonen protagonist, and he got that. So I respect the man for doing that. And the artwork, honestly, it's I'm not going to complain. It's not the best artwork, but I do like the character designs for some of the supernatural beings, and I like how they handle certain details when the characters are doing something ridiculous or the fight scenes are breaking out. It ain't something to scoff at. And there's also the chance where background details of the art might be actually phenomenal. From a story that actually has a lot of potential to characters that might be sort of likable and one that might be sort of broken, it's a good read to pick up. Because if it doesn't get cancelled like some of the shonen shit I read, then this might be actually getting an anime in a couple of years, and it might be interesting to see where the story goes. Now, not to nitpick, but I want more complex characters going forward instead of simplistic characters that are defined by 2 traits only. Now, if you're familiar with the author's previous work, then you might like this. And as a reminder, the author's previous work, Hell's Paradise, is actually getting an anime release next year, so that's something to get interested in also. Which means if you don't read manga but you particularly watch anime, I'll suggest you wait until next year and you can see this man's fucking brilliant art and story writing get into the play and the mix. And other things I can nitpick at is if you like complex power systems per se, like JJK's power system or JoJo Bizarre Adventure's power system, then this might not be the thing for you, but there ain't no explanation so far, so I guess we can call it that. Now, if you like this video, hit the like and subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon so that you can get updated when I post like every 6 weeks, but I'll try to post more often, and thank you for watching.